Hi, everybody. This is Peter Cipcowski, and we are here for another segment in the Roe Jan Community Library series of mini oral histories. And I have the pleasure today of speaking with Janet Mackin. Hi, Janet.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice to see you without a mask, face to face here in our separate spaces. Last
Right.
time I saw you, you were handing out masks in front of the Grange, and I thank you very much for the one you gave me.
Stylish, wasn't it?
It was very fetching, very fetching. So today, Janet, I'd love for you to share sort of the story of how you came to this community, and then of course we'll talk about your involvement in the community and your illustrious career, and of course we'll talk about how we're all responding to the virus. But maybe you could start by talking a little bit about how you came to this community, and Copake in particular.
So I guess it's about 45 years ago that Jim, my husband, and I started hiking up here. The hikes, we had no car. So what we would do is Jim would plan a trip. We'd go to Hudson by train, and then we would hike over to this area, which I was not happy about. It was always a long hike, walk.
You would hike from Hudson to this area?
Yeah, somewhere along the line, I would say we got to hitch a ride because it was too far from me.
Jim didn't want to take the train to Copake Falls, which was possible 45 years ago?
That's interesting, Peter. We always took the Peter Pan bus up here.
Oh,
so
okay.
we're kind of at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we did hiking in the area. We did it not just on the streets, but also on the trails up here, and we loved it. And then one trip we walked on Weed Mine Road, and so we got a good sense of what the area was like, and I loved it. And then a few years after that, we put an ad in the Roe Jan Independent newspaper asking for land. And Nancy Brucey at that time actually responded to us and said she's got this piece of land, which is 361 Weed Mine Road. And we bought it, and it was just all overgrown. So we had energy, but we had no money. So we started cutting stuff down with loppers. We cleared a patch of land, and then we got this idea we were going to build a log cabin. And so here we are today, 40 so years later, and we've been very happy, originally as weekenders, but now that we're retired, we're up here, now up here for 44 days in a row. But now we're doing about 4 days up here and 3 days in the city. And here's my husband, Jim, just to say.
Hey, Jim.
Hi there. Peter, how you doing?
Doing great, Jim. I was just thinking about you. I was just on a webinar with Cornell listening to a webinar on native trees and shrubs, and I know that you have some expertise in that area.
I do, and I think of you all the time, Peter. Take care.
I'm happy to hear that. Bye, Jim.
Go easy on her.
That's great. That's great. And by the way, Janet, I was just thinking about the math here. 45 years ago was about the time, when would that have been? Well, in any event, the passenger train to Copake Falls expired around 73, and I forget how old I am. I still think of the train as coming just a few years ago, but of course.
The passenger train was gone, but when we got this property, we're right on the rail trail now, which means we're right on the rail tracks. And we did see one train go by, and we thought it was really cool, yeah, but not passengers, so.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that ended around 74 or 75, I believe, the freight trains.
Yeah, I guess that would have been.
Is that right? Okay. Right.
Actually, I have to tell you, Peter, Jim is the historian of the family, and I'm just a person who'll tell you my personal story.
Hey, listen, personal stories are the heart of history. So this is what it's about. So Janet, so you've been involved in, how did you come to get active in the community? What was it? How long did it take you? And what motivated you to get involved in the community the way you have?
It took a long time because weekenders come up here, and our general weekend was we were exhausted. So we would come up here to hide away. And there was no natural entry point into meeting people in the community because We didn't have kids in school. That's a great way to meet people in the area. We had no religious affiliations, so we didn't meet people that way. And so after all those years, we've only gotten active in the community in the last, for Jim, well, say like the last 8 years or so ago.
Was there someone in particular in the community that lured you into their hornet's nest?
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking of it. It was Deb Cohen who told us about what was going on here. And I guess in some ways the rest is history. She made us feel comfortable here. Jim is very fond of Edgar and is doing a lot of stuff with him at the Ironworks. But because of her, we began to feel a part of the community.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you've become involved in the Grange project in Copake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the Grange is before you tell us, you know, what you're doing now? Because it's a wonderful, I mean, it's a wonderful arc, right? There's this building that has well, you tell us.
Yeah, so in 1902, the people of Copake, and it was primarily farmers at that time, came together and they decided that they were going to be a part of the national organization of the Grange. And the national organization was started earlier than that, after the Civil War. And it was a wonderful organization because it was one way of bringing people together about a common interest. At that time, the country was in strife, so you couldn't talk about politics. You couldn't really talk about finances, and religion can sometimes be very divisive. So the Grange was finding a topic that could bring people together, and that was agriculture. And so a local chapter started in 1902. In 1903, they built Grange Hall on a piece of land donated by one of the Langdons, and it stands there today. And it's, you know, we'll be celebrating our 120th anniversary in 2 years.
How was the Grange typically managed over the decades before its current incarnation?
Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun going through the minutes, because we've got those 1902 minutes.
Wow.
And, yeah, it's really cool. All handwritten very beautifully. And the numbers go up and down. So I think the original number of people who signed up and paid to be a member was in the 60s. So it's gone higher up to in the hundreds, and then very, very much lower. In the, say, 3 years ago, we were down to, you know, a dozen members. That was it. So it has changed a lot with time.
In 1976, I remember as a kid giving a slideshow there of my experience as a community ambassador. I did that, you know, to all of the local Grange halls. There was one in Hillsdale, and of course, lots of basements and churches too. But I remember being there, and there was a pretty good audience of local folks, farmers, in 1976 still.
Yeah, sorry I missed it, Peter.
You could have been there. Oh, I'm sure it was very exciting. Listen, the Grange now has become such a cornerstone of the Roe Jan community, and it's so exciting to see all this life breathed into it. What's the mission of the current incarnation of the Copake Grange?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to thank the people who have gotten it back up. We're at about 100 members now. So that was definitely Jean Mettler and Chris Quinby and Tom Goldsworthy, Roberta Roll. These are really people that are influential in the town in general, but for the Grange specifically. And I'm leaving out a ton of names, but those people started getting it going again. Bernice O'Connell, she's been there, I think, for the whole time, and she's kind of like a historian, especially lets us know what the rules and regulations are.
So sorry to interrupt you. So it's still technically the Copake Grange. It's still it's really the continuation of what the Grange was in the early 20th century.
Yeah, we're part of the National Grange, the State Grange, and you do have to pay $3 to apply to be a member. And in 1902, you had to pay $3 to apply to be a member. Some things never change. But we do have to be cognizant of the way the National Grange tells us, to run the organization. So we're a fraternal organization, but right from the start, women could hold roles in the Grange of leadership. And think of it, it's like they were doing this in the early 1900s before women got the right to vote.
Interesting. So, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us now about what the objectives are of the Grange currently in Copake.
Yeah. The National Grange recently changed its mission, and believe it or not, it was in February that we presented a change in our mission, at least our written mission. I think in spirit we were always there. So it's about advocacy, service, definitely cultural activities, which has been a part of the Grange from the very, very start, as well as entertainment. So we do a lot of entertaining there, but it's about bringing people together in these roles. It's about agricultural awareness now. There are just a handful of members of the Grange who have some or had some connection to the agricultural community. But think of it as a service organization that has that light touch to it that brings people together for happy times.
Are there still are there any farmers in the organization, or are there any activities that are focused on local agriculture?
Well, there are people with the history in farming, like Cipcowski's father had a farm until fairly recently, I mean, in our generation. And Carol Gansowski's, her family also had it. But, farmers have a very hard life. So for them to have any social life, especially in the summer when we're doing more things, we only have one dairy farm left in Copake, where years ago there were dozens of them. So.
Yeah, of course. You were surrounded by them when you first came to this community.
Exactly.
Right. So tell me, how has the Grange been responding to COVID-19? How has it been in service to the community?
Yeah, we realized with that change of mission, coincidentally, that we had to think about doing something for the community. So what we wound up coming up with, the first thing was the match-up program, where you'd match up people who needed groceries or medications with people who volunteered. The really good thing is we got 32 people volunteered to do that. So the volunteers outnumbered the number of people who needed help. But I found that really reassuring to know that the help is there if you need it. And just today, before I'm talking to you, I talked to Bernice O'Connell, one of my favorite Grange members, and she needed help with her shopping and groceries. She's really kept herself on a strict isolation. So she got matched up with one of our newest members called Bridget Johnston, and she was calling just to say thank you for the matchup. The two of them wouldn't recognize each other if they were on the street, but they've talked a lot on the phone. Bernice says she knows all about Bridget's family. So it was a great matchup. So
that's a wonderful way of getting people to connect with people who wouldn't otherwise connect.
Exactly. Bridget is, I think, our youngest member, and Bernice is not our oldest member, because they say that we definitely have a member, Bernice Bussett, who's 100 years old, so none of us come close. But Bernice is one of our kind of originals, we call them. So the different generations, it's really a nice way of bringing people together.
I have to ask, how are some of the, as you call them, originals reacting to the new energy and life in the Grange?
Yeah, I think it's always hard for new people coming in. But I think like Bernice is a great example. She's like embraced us, and people like Jane Peck, she's been a longtime member. Whenever I send out a general email, because I'm the secretary, so the general emails come from me, Jane almost always says, thanks a lot, getting, that was interesting information. I'll try that, I'll do that. So people like that are wonderful.
So Janet, tell me, I mean, you are a nurse. You were a nurse administrator for many years. Were you one of the voices that brought the possibility of distributing masks to the community?
You know it, Peter. Yeah, that was important to me. Interesting enough, we have our big fundraiser in September, and it's a square dance and ice cream social. It's following the tradition from back in the 1900s. So in anticipation, because I'm on the fundraising committee, I bought tons of bandanas for the square dance. And then they told us, CDC put out this direction of how to make a bandana into a face mask. I've got mine here, I'll show you. So it's really just with rubber bands and just folded, so like so. And it's a great mask. So that's the easy way that we decided to use those bandanas sooner rather than later, and to use it for something. Hey, I'm thinking people, after using the bandanas now for the square dance, they could put them on and wear them in a different way.
That's great. And they're washable. So
right.
We can live through COVID-19 and come to the gala in September. Is the gala still scheduled?
Yeah, it's late September, and we don't want to make any decisions yet.
Sure.
We're hoping that that might be one of those first bring us all together events. It's high touch, when you're square dancing, you're really interacting. And I think that made it actually such a positive event last year, because, when you just swing your partner, it's a different relationship you have with that person. I think forever, I was dancing with people I hardly knew, and I think we feel different about each other. Yeah.
Sure. No, that's an interesting idea. There's no question. I guess dancing does sort of, I don't know, break down some barriers. Yeah. And we'll have to, and I guess that's why they've been square dancing at Grange Halls for 150 years or beyond, right?
150, at least not ours, 118, I think it is now. Interesting, there was this group of dancers from the Grange here, that they were really good dancers. So good, let me try to get this straight, that they were selling war bonds, so that would be for World War II. They were selling war bonds, and they were doing all these dances. Anyway, this group of dancers were so good, they won the local competition. Then they went on, and the next level of competition was down, I think, in Philadelphia. Don't quote me on these parts of it, but this is the important part. On their way back up to Copake, they got to dance in the windows of Macy's. How could you forget that?
That's amazing. What year was that? Do you happen to know when that was roughly?
This is the part that I would have to call Jim in.
Okay.
I'm a historian, I've got the things in front of me, but
yeah.
Me, so
one of my best friends growing up was David Ashley, who lived in Copake. Unfortunately, David is now deceased, but as are his parents, George and what was Mrs. Ashley's name? Of course, she was Mrs. Ashley to me, but she and George Ashley were major Grange Hall square dancers, and I have a very vivid memory of them twirling around their living room downtown Copake, and in probably every open barn in the community.
so
I wonder if they made it to Macy's. I don't know.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Janet. Tell me.
It's definitely going to be adjusted, but this year we wanted to do the Copake cupcake competition, and we had planned it for the end of May. The nice thing about living in Copake is that everybody says, where is it? It rhymes with cupcake. So we thought we'd do a cupcake competition. So we're definitely going to have to change it up, but we're going to do something that's Copake cupcakes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you'll be doing that later this year.
Yes.
Any other events coming up now that are that people should know about that they can plan for?
Yeah. Well, today is Copake Pickup Day. So normally what would happen is a group would come to the Grange, they'd get vests and garbage bags and like the get-go to get out there on the street and in the hamlet of Copake to pick up the garbage there. But we can't do that this year. So we're all like doing it in our own neighborhoods and picking it up there. And then we'll do some selfies and post them on our Instagram and Facebook accounts.
That's great. That's great, Janet. Well, Janet, is there anything else that you want to share with the community about what you've observed the last 45 years or so in our community, or any words of wisdom you want to give us before we say goodbye today?
Yeah, I definitely say that the community, I've heard this from the people who have moved up here, the weekenders, especially now, the words are, we're so lucky that we are here. We're here for, and some of us just because this is the best place to be for isolation, but we're here because we chose it. It's a beautiful area. And that's the phrase that I've heard so much. We're so lucky to be here. And that's what I say too.
Well, thank you, Janet, for your time today. Thank you for your engagement in the community, for helping to revitalize the Grange. I know that's been a team effort, but I really appreciate your voice and taking the time today.
Oh, if we could follow your example, Peter, we would have the best community in the world.
We're all in this together.
Hey, thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you so much for sharing it, Janet. Talk to you later.
Bye, Peter.
Bye-bye.